Today I'll be talking to you about the 4 success drivers for mobile applications. So that applies for both iOS and Android, obviously. Throughout the presentation, the talk, if you have any question, anything is not clear, or you want to contribute, please intervene. I'll be asking lots of questions anyway. So, what is app success, according to you guys? What makes an app successful? And I'm looking at you guys. Downloads. What else?
Cash.
Cash. He likes cash. Is there anything apart from cash that matters?
Making people's work easier.
Sorry?
Making people's work better or easier. If they're doing something.
Yes, a sense of
Improving users' experience. Whatever they're doing.
Yep, improving users' experience, contributing to the world, to the community. Are there other things that make an app successful?
Yeah. When somebody is sitting on this more than 2 seconds.
Yes, when you don't churn your app right after installing it. That's a sign of success. Anything else? When you don't get a 1-star review, that's success. I am a big fan of the first point, cold hard cash, because it's always nice to have these other things, but at the end of the day, it's nice to bring home some cash, because we've got families, or would like to have some, or don't, but we don't live off goodwill from people. A 5-star rating by itself doesn't buy beer. So, another point that can provide for app success is valuation. Now, I've talked about cold hard cash, which is a revenue stream. But another strategy at becoming successful is to make your app and your company so attractive that people are willing to pay lots of money to acquire it. So it's a bit outside the model, outside the box, but it's definitely a viable strategy. Okay, so there are 4 drivers. You can also see them as pillars that provide success for an app. First is user acquisition, and then retention. So as you said, not uninstalling the app 2 seconds after installing it. Engagement, so whether people are actually using your app. It's nice when your app is installed and people actually use it. And it's not just staying there because it's light and they haven't noticed it. And monetization is also a driver of success. So I'll be presenting to you a model. Now you might ask yourself, why a model? And the main reason is that to simplify the decision-making process. Oh, I said decision-making. Yes, I'll be talking about this today. It's a whole point of the presentation to help with decision-making. We are developers, but we might want to be tempted by starting our own app, starting our own business. We might be interested in more product owner-like positions. And this, what I'm showing you today, will help you do that. You might be interested in seeing what's the other side of the medal. How does my PO think? Why is my boss an asshole? Why does he not understand my priorities? That's some stuff we'll be exploring. And the use of a model simplifies reality. Of course, you use a model and you're like, yeah, but that's not reality. There are parts missing. Well, this is a map of where we are. It's a model. It doesn't correspond to reality. There are lots of important information that are not there. It's not said that it's on the 2nd floor. The first time I came here, I was looking for this place quite a lot. This map helps. Doesn't provide all the information, but it helps. If I had to choose a single tool to get here, I'd pick that map. It's a model of the surroundings. So models are not able to answer all questions, but they do help a lot. Questions so far? We software engineers, we like features. That's what we're paid for. We're paid for adding features. We're not paid so much for removing features, which is what UX designers are sometimes paid for. Removing features and making the app more simple. But that's not something we engineers like doing or often do. And without the use of such a model, it's very easy to put acquisition and monetization on the back burner. We don't give it attention. And we keep developing the app and developing the app and developing the app. And then you realize, I've spent a year of my life on this. I spent half a year, and I don't have anything in my hands. So I have this model here, quite simple. 4 categories: acquisition, retention, engagement, monetization. Then you have colors: green, yellow, and red, just like when you drive. It's not very complex as a model. You don't have lots of numbers, but it has a good quality. It puts your eyes on the ball, so you always have your eyes on what's important, because these are what bring value to you. And it's easy to communicate using such a model. At any time, you can talk to your partner, your boss, your employees, your colleagues, and say, right now, acquisition is doing really fine, but our engagement and monetization, it sucks. We need to focus on that. And using such a model, you're able to break down your scope of actions into a limited amount of categories that are easily communicable. Any questions on this model?
Do green means that we should go for the acquisition or to engagement and monetization?
Okay, so you asked what the green light means. Yes, that's not clear actually, because the traffic lights, green means go. But here green means healthy. Yellow means okay-ish. Red means bad health. It's bleeding. Does that answer?
Yeah,
Okay. So let me see again. What is acquisition?
That we need to engage new user to use our app.
Yes, downloads, for instance. Retention.
So they will use that app, so we have like daily active users.
Yes, so that they will keep using it. What about engagement?
Daily. Come back to that. They use it all the time.
Yes, there is this distinction between retention and engagement that is not super obvious. Engagement is more about how much you use it, and retention is the fact that you still use it, that you have not uninstalled it. And monetization? Cold hard cash. Okay, so in terms of acquisitions, you have organic. Organic acquisitions are wonderful because they don't cost you any cold hard cash. So you get to keep your cash. Paid acquisitions, do you know channels you can use to acquire users?
AdWords, Facebook ads.
AdWords, Facebook ads. Paid bloggers, yes, very good.
You can appear on events.
Yes, absolutely. You can give talks about your product. You can, what else do you have on your mind with appearing on events?
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can make your own blog, create your own content. You can be a publisher on Facebook, have followers, Instagram, Twitter. You can pay not only bloggers, because bloggers do get paid. You not only pay bloggers, but magazines, newspapers, so that they can review your app, talk about it in subtle and less subtle ways. Yes?
Are you talking about your own experience or is a word considered no-go?
I'm talking about my own experience, enhanced by research.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've done most of the stuff there, but not everything. So throughout the talk, you can stop me and ask me questions and say, how was it for you, Bruno? Like, it's nice that you present that to us, but how did you live that? And yes, I do use this all the time. Every time that we plan what we do next, we have that on our mind. And these are not the colors for my app. Okay, something important about acquisition is that you have to evaluate it on a per channel basis. You'll find out really rapidly that your AdWords, when you start your project, you'll find really rapidly that your AdWords performance sucks, because you probably suck at using AdWords because you've never used it. And you'll realize that someone who finds your app by themselves finds it because they're looking exactly for what you're offering. Whereas people that find your app through AdWords, you probably didn't target them properly. So then you start wondering, what is it that I'm doing wrong with AdWords? How am I not targeting properly? And then you start new campaigns. And then you track your AdWords activity on a per campaign basis. And more about that later. But I want to really stress the importance that acquisition is a very important channel to evaluate. Is a very important point on which you evaluate per channel. And the cost associated with it. You can reach out to people on Facebook, let's say. It costs you, let's say you have a fantastic promotion and it's really catchy, you got a really good marketing guru. It costs you half a cent per user. And on AdWords, $3. So there's a world of difference. But that's just an example. It's possible that you have different numbers. Retention. What is your D1 figure? D1? Anyone? D stands for day. So retention after 1 day. How many people are still using your app after 1 day? There's a guy called Andrew Chen. He is the, I think his title is growth hacker at Uber. You guys know Uber? It's a company that's grown a lot, very rapidly. So this guy is really fantastic because first, he's really good. I mean, Uber, it is so much better than its competition. Do you guys know Lyft? Not so much. Do you guys know BlaBlaCar? A bit more because they have an office in Warsaw. But Uber is super fantastic in terms of growth. And the other thing that makes this guy fantastic is that he really cares to tell people about what he does and how to do it themselves. And Andrew Chen came up with here a table based on real hard data of retention rates after 1, 3, 7, 14, 30, 60, and 90 days. There are other dates, but he published that table. So, what do we have here? The average application after 3 days, 3 out of 10 people are still using it. That means that 7 people stopped using it and will never use it again. That's scary. You put all your hard work onto your application, and 3 days afterwards, only 3 out of 7 people are still using it. That's the average. Hopefully you're doing better. Now that I've talked about this, do you guys know about your retention rate? Do that when you get to work tomorrow. Ask the PO, ask team leader, ask everyone, what is our retention rate? That is very important. This is why you're making applications, so people use it. How do you fare against the market? Not only your retention rate after, let's say, 3 days, but also the shape of your curve. For instance, my application is a little bit above here and is around 30% here. I have an interesting curve for my application. I start up high and I drop faster than the market does. Now, something else that is interesting, which is not shown on this table, is that the rate at which retention decreases is constant, or rather the points of percentage are constant. Here you have about 3, a little more. But if you look at the curves, they all look the same, but their starting point is different. That's something you will see once you start analyzing retention rates and give it more attention. So, the retention rate is very important because this is one way that you can see, okay, are people using my app? And it's also one thing that you can measure, which means that you can target, which means that you can make sprint goals out of it. Your retention rate can be calculated per day, per week, per month. Google Analytics does it for you. You just got to track. I would believe that any decent tracking tool gives you a report on retention. On Google Analytics, it's called cohort analysis, if I remember well. Okay. Now you ask yourself, how do I improve retention? How do I improve retention, guys?
Pay people.
Sorry?
Pay them, pay the users.
Yes, but that's not a long-term strategy.
Maybe the use application has to be useful.
Yes, and how do you find out whether your application is useful to people?
Retention and coming back useful.
Well, how do you improve it?
I don't know.
Use Google Analytics or something like that.
Yeah, you can use Google Analytics in your strategy, but I'm glad you didn't just read the slide and give me the answer. I feel super smart giving you the answer from the slide. A/B testing is a fantastic way to improve your retention. So what's A/B testing?
We just ship a part of the feature to only a specified part of users and test the outcome of that.
Exactly. So I'll repeat for everyone. You split your users in 2 groups. You send one group to one category, the other to the other category. They will see, hear, feel, or anything. They will have a different user experience. And then you analyze their behavior. Whether they purchase more, they sign up more, they send more messages, anything. You analyze their behavior, among which the retention rate. So a typical, to give a very simple example, A/B testing, onboarding. These are like bananas and Nutella. They go so well together. When people are A/B testing, most of the time, they're A/B testing onboarding. Doesn't mean you should A/B test only onboarding, but that's the typical case. Okay, so you enter the app. Do you soft log in your user, or do you already ask them to fill in their username, password, and their picture? And then you test. You split people in two groups. We ask these people right away. We ask these people later. And then you'll find out. Most likely, the group that you don't ask them right away will have better retention, will engage with your app better. But there's no magic formula. Every app belongs to a different market, is in a different niche on the market. So that brings me to the next point. Art or science? When you go to a music concert, is it art or science? Which one?
Well, it depends. If it's a Daft Punk concert, it's more science. Like Chopin's concert, brilliant pianists, it's more of an art.
Yeah, that's one way to see it. All the artists, or almost all of them, have a professional training of some sort. They have that feeling for their art. They're artists, after all. But they do have a background on which they base themselves. They don't just create their own musical system. They reuse a musical system that's been invented for them 500 years ago. So app development is also the same. There's a part of art where you know that you won't A/B test, for example, two scenarios where on onboarding, for one group, you ask them for 5 phone numbers of their friends that you're going to call. And on the other option, you give them the goodies right away. They have the great user experience. You don't A/B test that, because you know what the outcome will be. So you can inform your decisions in your A/B testing, but afterwards, after you make that informed guess, then comes the science, then comes the statistics, then comes looking at the hard numbers, banging your head at them, trying to figure out what is better. And you can do A/B testing, but you can also do A, B, C, D, E testing. Although then it gets a bit more complex and you need paid tools, which are called multivariate analysis or regression. So let's say that you want to test, let's say, 5 different UI elements on your page at the same time, because you have 10,000 new users a day, so you can afford, statistically speaking, having such a setup. You can do A, B, C, D, E, just to really go quickly at finding out the best options. Yes?
Sorry, I'm curious about that A/B testing. Do you split the users? Again, there might be no magic formula, but do you split users randomly or based on any predicates?
Randomly. If you don't split them randomly, then you don't have a random sample. If you don't have a random sample, you cannot do statistical inference. If you cannot do statistical inference, you're just pulling out random numbers. So regarding retention, there's the aha moment. What is the Facebook aha moment?
They want you to pay more for advertising.
When they what?
When they want more to pay for advertising.
Okay.
0.5%, not about 1%.
Okay. That's an answer. Do other people?
Make a friend.
Oh, make a friend. That's an action. We're on a good track. What actions on Facebook are important? Liking cat videos?
Install notification button.
Yes. Installing the application, the Facebook application, that's a good action.
We can measure it.
We can what?
We can measure.
Yes. Yes. That's something very important. You won't get a aha moment if you cannot measure it. So Facebook very famously came up with this 7 friends in 10 days aha moment. So if you join Facebook and within 10 days you add 7 people, you're going to be addicted. You're going to come back. You're going to become a loyal user. Slack, 2,000 messages sent inside a team. Once you reach that threshold, that team is addicted to Slack. They're not going to change to HipChat or Microsoft. Dropbox, 1 file in 1 Dropbox folder on 1 device. But they ran the numbers and they saw if the person doesn't drop a file, they're not going to be using our application. Now, that brings in very interesting insight. If 1 file in 1 Dropbox folder on 1 device is the objective, what does it mean about onboarding? Should we focus people on linking their Dropbox account to Twitter? We should do everything to get that 1 file in 1 Dropbox folder on 1 device. The whole onboarding should be focused on that because this is what makes people stay in the app. That's what drives up retention. On Zynga, the user returns 1 day after signing up. My app is Baby Manager. I say my app, but it's our app with Victor over there. We looked at the numbers, we tried to find out what makes people come back. We started the app thinking, we're going to make an awesome baby tracker. People are going to be tracking so many things about their baby. And we've tracked people tracking their baby. And you can add feedings, you can add diaper changes, you can add sleep sessions, you can add growth measuring. At first we started thinking, oh, it's so cool, you record growth, so you see a chart and you see the growth percentile of your child. That's so cool. So we focused a bit on that and we made push notifications. Oh, it's time to measure your child. You haven't entered any weight yet. And we thought we were really clever. Then we look at the retention rate for this segment of people who entered that first weight. Didn't matter. We were focusing on the wrong thing. And then we crunched more numbers using Google Analytics. We segmented our users. What is it that makes people come back? Well, everyone who comes back tracks feedings. So we did this baby tracker app that became a breastfeeding tracking app. We didn't know about it when we started, but this is what brought people their aha moment. So then that brings in a totally different game. How do we get people to track their first feeding? How do we direct them to the first feeding inside the app? How do we make sure they don't miss it and that they want to record it? And then once they've recorded the first one, we need to make them record the second one. Because recording the first one didn't have an impact on retention. Recording 2 and more feedings, now that was the aha moment. So when you discover what it is that makes a difference for your users, that makes them come back, then you focus on that. You might remember when you first signed up on Facebook, there was something really annoying. They kept showing you all the people you know, and they kept asking you, give us your email, we'll find your friends. It was quite aggressive. But Facebook was far from being the only social portal. There were so many of them. I think even in Poland there was a local portal similar to Facebook. Nasza Klasa, I think. But Facebook, they came out on top in so many countries, probably except Russia only, maybe China. And that's because they discovered their aha moment. The last thing I want to say about the aha moment is that it's such a great communicating tool. You can take anyone in your company. You can take someone from accounting, and you can explain to them what's the aha moment. It's something very simple that you can rally around. So let me ask you, do you know what is your aha moment in your app? That's one more question for tomorrow. What's our retention rate curve, the starting point and the shape of the curve? And what's the aha moment? And if no one has an answer, there's an opportunity for you. Dive into the tracking of your app. If you have a free solution like Google Analytics, you can track this. You can find the insight you want. If you have any other tool, I'm sure they have some very good utilities for you. I'm not a very big fan of Google Analytics, even though I talk a lot about them. I use them because they're free. But I know there's better out there. Okay, regarding the aha moment, because you'll want to crunch your numbers. Here we have a music app. Let's say Spotify. Let's say this is Spotify. It's not, but let's pretend. Here we have the number of songs that were favorited and the retention rate. So the retention rate for people who favorited 10 songs is 93%. That's pretty good. So according to you, what is the aha moment here? Sorry? 4 songs. Okay, at 4 songs we're at 75%. Anyone else? Free songs. Well, if you answer a number, you're wrong. Because this is a trick question. There's no aha moment here. I'm sorry, I had to do this one. Okay, so on the right-hand side, you have a Venn diagram. Your aha moment will look more like this, where the action almost perfectly matches your group of retained users. So here, you have to keep looking, because this Venn diagram, it's far from matching. There's much more to be explained than just favorite songs. It doesn't explain the whole picture, and that's why favorite songs are not the answer. You gotta keep digging, keep crunching the numbers, keep segmenting, track all the actions that your user does. Any questions here? Okay, engagement. So metrics for engagements are sessions per day, session length, and sessions per user. This section is super straightforward. If you stick to the metrics, you understand it very well. So here we're not talking about retention rate or churn rate, which is the flip side of retention, which is the rate at which people dump your app. We're not talking about this. We're talking really about these metrics. let's say you have a weather app. You have very good retention, but the engagement is really low. You look at the temperature, yeah, you know it. It's likely not going to change. You're not going to look at it again. When we talk about Facebook, when you look at Facebook, it's likely that you're going to spend more than 5 seconds looking at it. The weather app, low engagement, high retention. Monetization. As you might have guessed, that's one of my favorite topics because I want to bring money home. That's why we work. No one works for free. Or if you do, let me know. So, there are a few metrics that are interesting. The lifetime value of a single user. That's actually quite different from the monthly value of a user. The average value of a session. This can or not be relevant to your kind of application. If you have a subscription-based model, you don't really care about the average value of a session. If you have, let's say, a video game where you get a certain amount of energy, and the more you play, the less energy you have, unless you pay again to have more energy, then you care about the number of sessions. You care about people purchasing during those sessions. Another very interesting metric is the days to first transaction. It helps you find out, am I able to deliver, to explain to my user my value proposition? Am I able to convert them? Installs are great, they're really cool. But unless you've got someone wanting to buy you, they're just cool. Unless someone wants to buy you, you have to make your users buy. Or you do it for free. Now, the lifetime value of a single user. That's a metric that I find really, really important. We talked about AdWords earlier. But this applies to all the acquisition channels. Here, this is related to what I'm saying. This is the average spending of a paying user for these games. This is outrageous. This makes you wonder why you don't develop games. What can you buy with $550? Well, you can buy a shitload of things in Game of War Fire Age. And that's the average spending per user that pays in that game. Now, let's suppose that this number is not for the spending user, but for each user, just to make this more simple. I didn't have the numbers for each user, but let's suppose this is for each user. This means that Game of War can spend on acquiring a single user $500, and it's still going to make a shitload of money. Of course, there's maintenance, salaries, and so on, but they could pay $500 per user, and it would still come out pretty well out of it. Now, let's say that you, who's not a game developer, who's not earning, by the way, here's Minecraft, $650. But they're cool guys. So, you're an app developer. You earn per user $2.50. Now, that means you can calibrate your AdWords campaigns to spend $2 on acquiring a user, because your average user spends $2.50. That's why it's really interesting to look at the lifetime value of a user. It helps you make decisions on your advertisement campaigns, on your acquisition campaigns. I'll go back a bit. Here's another chart. How much games are making per user. And I showed that to Victor today, and he said, wow, well, we're not doing so bad. We're at 10 cents. And I was like, no, compared to them, we're doing horrible, because this is per day. That's how much games of these categories earn per day per user. Now, I put a lot of stress on that, on those numbers, because that brings me to the point. We have to know how much we earn from our users. I used to work in a company in Warsaw that was basically like Pracuj.pl, but for other countries. That's a very interesting question. How much money do we earn making people send CVs using the app? Meaning, how much can we spend on acquiring these users? A user might cost you $1 on AdWords. Go for it, spend on AdWords. It's going to be pure profit because you earn $2.50, let's say, per user. Any questions on these slides? Are you jealous? Are you questioning your life decisions? I was curious about finding out numbers, and when I looked at that, I was like, we work so hard to help people track their babies. What's more important than ensuring your baby is gaining weight, is fed, sleeps? And these guys are making so much more money than I am. I felt life was a bit unfair. But then whining about it doesn't help it. Segmentation. We're drawing to an end. All the 4 success drivers can and should be analyzed under different segments. Now, the word segment is not the most obvious word in the English language. Men and women, 2 different segments. Old people, young people. People from the United States. In our app, Baby Manager, I think 65% of revenue comes from the United States. At some point, we realized that the spending in the US was disproportionate as per the user base. And we realized there are features American users are asking for. We need to respond to them as soon as possible. Let's say errors in Polish translations don't matter so much when our American users are having localized issues. We didn't allow for proper picking of units for weights. So, not being American, you could enter we are not American, we use kilograms and grams because modernity. Americans, hi, they use pounds and ounces. So your baby weighs, let's say, 8 pounds, 4 ounces. So you take your baby app, you expect 8 pounds, 4 ounces. We had 8 pounds, and you can enter your own decimals. Thank you very much. So our American users were complaining. But looking at market segmentation, we were able to prioritize the change requests, the improvement requests. By segmenting, you will find out where you throw money out of the window. If you have a new app project, or even an old one, you'll realize you're wasting a lot of money with little effect. And once you segment, you will see that very easily. So, we have this model: acquisition, retention, engagement, monetization. 4 colors. Green is good, yellow is so-so, red, it's not nice, you're bleeding. You're the product owner of this application, or you're the CEO. of that application. Tomorrow morning, you come to the office. Your one of your employees presents you this snapshot of your app. What do you do and why? This is an open question, and I expect answers.
Focus on retention.
Focus on
Retention.
retention. Why is that?
Well, that seems to be the one that has the worst reality. You're losing 70% of your users after 7 days.
Let's have a look at it.
It's pretty good.
So, after 7 days, we have a retention rate of how much?
30%.
30%. So 7 days, 30%. You're in between 5,000 and 100 best apps. Not so good. After how many days? After 1 day, 51%. So 1 day, 51%. You're about here, top 100 apps. Top 100 on the market, it's not so bad. So day 7, D7 retention, yes, it's not very good. D1 retention, it's decent. So maybe that's what you want to work on. Do we have alternative answers?
Monetization.
You want cold hard money? Yes. This is horrible monetization. If we compare that to games, yes, it's very bad. And it could be much better. What about acquisition? Green, yellow, red? Possibly. It's quite likely it's green. If you have to make a quick decision, it's green. Now, if you're a social network like Facebook, that's red. But in general, 500 organic installs a day, it allows you to run very nice A/B tests. In 2 days, you get 1,000 users. 1,000 users, that's starting to be non-trivial. You can do statistical inference out of such a number of users. Engagement. It is stellar. Such engagement is off the charts. Now you ask the question like, do you have any real experience or is it just taken out of the blue? This is my application, our application. We monetize really badly. And the funny thing is, whenever we meet to talk about the app, we always start by saying, what cool features do we bring next? Because that's what we like doing. We like bringing in new features. But at the end of the day, we got families. And we need to focus on our monetization. And it used to be 1 cent. So we came along a long way. We focused on improving advertisements. We used to have there's a metric called revenue per 1,000 impressions. So you show an ad 1,000 times, how much money do you make? We were around 30 cents, Canadian cents. We're around $2 now. So we optimized our advertising. That's something we did in a very deliberate fashion. It didn't just happen by coincidence. We worked on it because we used such a model. We looked at our retention rate. We said, D1 is fantastic. D7, it's weak. But there are parts where we need to invest more work. So then we developed paid features, and monetization went up. And we're still at the point where monetization does not satisfy us. So this is an example, a real-life example of the kind of picture you get if you use this model for analyzing your app, and the kind of decision that this model helps you make. Last slide, acquisition. Let's say you have an awesome app. Your competitor has a crappy app, it's ugly, and so on. You monetize about the same, but his acquisition cost is 3 times cheaper. So he can conduct campaigns with, let's say, bloggers and journalists and so on. That other app has better contacts, better channels, and it acquires users much cheaper. They will outperform you. Even if you have a better app, they will outperform you. At the end of the day, they'll have more money in their pocket than you do. So acquisition, it tends to be overlooked. But if you have a very cheap acquisition channel, you can squash your competition. Retention. Your app is not doing fine. You wish it did better. What do? You add a feature. And then you add another one, and another one. And then your UX designer dies. You see him come to work. The light inside of him is dead. Adding more features doesn't necessarily help your app. You should rather focus on A/B testing, understanding what is the value that your users find in your app. We were a baby tracker application. We became a breastfeeding application because we looked at the value that people saw in our app. Engagement. Can I make coming back to the app worth it? What value do they get after the first, second, third, 20th views? And finally, for monetization, your users are most likely the source of your revenues, but they're not necessarily your only source of revenue. You can use your app as a platform for other advertisers, for product placement, for sponsored articles, links, native ads, paid content that looks real, like on news websites. There are lots of ways that you can monetize. So if you have subscription or in-app products and you don't perform as well as you wish, there are alternatives. And you can Google them. You'll get lists, 9 ways to monetize your app. Read a few of them and then you'll get a bunch of ideas. Here are the sources for what I've shown you guys, the numbers I've shown. In case you want to look at it, I think the presentation will be available somehow. And I would like to thank you and also ask you for questions.
So the basic of acquisitions is to pay.
Yes, that's one way to do it, but that's not the only way. Imagine a sandwich man that you put on the street and you say, you have a lemonade stand and you want to sell more lemonade.
We call the Mr. Kanapka.
You take Mr. Kanapka, you put him on the street and you say, there's a lemonade store there. Like you pay time, your own time, because you put on the sandwich boards. So yes, acquisition is very often money that you spend with an advertiser, but it's also time that you spend. You write articles on blogs, you do lots of different things, but it often boils down to money.
My question is, when you put your application on the Google Play, for example, and nothing happened, it's normal, it's okay.
It's not okay, but it's normal. Because you start at the very bottom and you stay at the bottom until something happens. And that's the part where you have to make that leap of faith, that you believe that your app is worth it, and then you sadly pay people to use your app. You acquire people knowing that you will not profit on that, and you just pay them and say, look, I worked really hard. I spent nights on this. Please use my app, please.
Of course.
There was an example when people on TV ask Billy Joel and make them sing and have recorded this sing and have mixing on some application from the App Store. And after this TV show, this application made tremendous success.
Yes, that's a very cheap acquisition channel. If you're able to get your app featured like that, you can totally outperform your competition with a bad app. But if you have good acquisition, you'll win. Now, it's better to have a good app and good acquisition. But a good app by itself is not everything you need. Other questions? Yes?
I've got a different point of view that you should make the customers pay from the beginning and try to sell the product actually.
Are you an iOS developer?
Sorry?
Are you an iOS developer?
Well, not really.
Android?
No, I'm not developing.
Okay. Well, what you said is that you have to make your users pay upfront for the product and keep making them pay for the product and get to deliver them value. That's something I would expect more from iOS, but still, you need to bring people to your app. Even if you sell it, you have to bring them to your app.
Model for like social apps, for example. Network effects, right?
Sorry?
That's a model for like social apps with network effects.
Not necessarily, because what I'm talking about is the fact that you want to get organic acquired users. So you will not organically acquire users if your app is at the very bottom, no one is using it, and no one's using it because it's at the bottom, and it's at the bottom because no one's using it, and so on. If you want to break out of that circle, then you will need to put your wallet and put it on the table, or have great acquisition strategies, like going on TV. And that even if your app is paid from the beginning, you need to get your app out there, because making a great app doesn't make an app successful by itself. You need to get it out there. Maybe you will post it on a channel, on a forum. People will love it, they will talk about it, but you did something to get it out there. Does that answer your question?
Shows me your point of view.
Well, at least I answered the question, and I did not digress. So I guess that's it. Thank you very much.